fundamentals of blackjack, correct?
Yes.
Okay. We'll make sure that by the time you leave, you will win and not the house. My name is TJ Clement. I'm a district court administrator down in Athens, Georgia, outside of Atlanta. We have the pleasure, or at least I have the pleasure, of introducing Janet Cornell, who I worked with on revising here the court administrator manual. She's going to walk us through that and give us some tips and strategies and some of the things that we came across as we were revising the manual over the last year. A little bit about Janet. She is the court administrator down at the Scottsdale City Court in Scottsdale, Arizona. She has over 30 years experience in the courts. She's an NACM fellow. She's attended leadership institutes. She's got a whole array of background. I'm not going to go into the full pedigree of that, but suffice to say, more information is in your handouts there. But before we begin, you should have 3 sheets in front of you: a stapled set of the slides from today, a mind map, and then an index card. Anybody that doesn't have those, just raise your hand. Bob here is going to kind of come around, see if we can get that taken care of. Keep your hands up if it's the end. This session, I'm told by Dan, is going to be somewhat interactive. So if you need to come up and pose a question or interact with us, we do have the microphone up here, or I will bring it over to you. So just raise your hand when we get to those segments. It looks like we might be a bit short, so if you're sitting next to somebody you know and don't mind sharing, you can put your hand down, and then if we still have 1 or 2 extras, we'll circle back around to you again. Got 2 or 3 more copies of just the handouts. Anyone back there in the back still needs one? Extra alignment? Okay. Anyone else? We've got a couple more copies. Well, we will go ahead and get started. Again, it is my esteemed pleasure to introduce Janet Cornell. Janet?
Thank you, TJ. Obviously, you all did get the announcement that this was fundamentals of blackjack. Wow. I am humbled by all of your appearance here today. After the lunch hour, after a night out on the town, thank you so much. Our topic today is the court administrator, our role, our purpose, and our capabilities. And I first want to ask for a show of hands. How many here are NACM members? Raise your hand. Welcome. Thank you. How many here are NASG members? Raise your hand. Thank you. Appreciate you being here. Is there anyone here who's a member of both organizations? Wonderful. Thanks on behalf of both organizations. Anyone here who heard about this great session and just came in off the street? Anyone? Kathleen? All right. The intent of this session is to be practical, to be interactive, participative, if you wish, to share information, and to stimulate your thinking. So far in the conference, we've had sessions on brains and bias, specific court system issues, thinking about social media, ethics awareness, performance awareness, self-awareness, if you will. And there are many aspects of that self-awareness that relate to this topic, who we are, what we do. And for purposes of this session and our sharing, I am assuming that every one of us fits the generic description of an administrator in a court. I am not assuming you have to be in the title, the court administrator, to find meaning in this. So I'll probably repeat that a couple of times. For those who are not in the role, not in the title, it's my intent that this applies to you. For those who are judges, for those who are other court system specialists, it's my intent that this will apply to you as well. This is being taped, so I will try to repeat the question. And if anyone cannot hear at any time, please ask me to repeat or slow down or restate. This is the session on the court administrator role, purpose, and capabilities. The conference, as you know, is on strengthening and supporting the administration of justice. Today's theme is professional court management education. I deem that our discussion about the court administrator role is an offshoot of thinking about professional court management of education and education. This session itself, we're going to spend some time thinking about our jobs, our work, and changes in our jobs. We're going to review the new court administrator manual. As NACM members, all of you should have received this. Just show me by raising your hand if you have received this in the mail and are familiar with this. Good, great, excellent. This is newly published, and that's part of why we're highlighting it in this session today, to review some of the content in this. This session today will also stimulate our thinking about ourselves, what our profession is going to be, what we need to have as our knowledge, skills, and abilities, and maybe also stimulate some of us who might be at some decision points. I've had discussions with a number of people here who are thinking about retirement, job changes, implementing projects of significant magnitude. It's my hope that some of the things we do here will support or reinforce us thinking through those aspects of our jobs. So, what exactly are we as court professionals? Are we gophers? Are we note takers? Are we fortune tellers? I've chosen to find this slide with some of these pictures. Do we get out the Ouija board some days and try to figure out what to do to solve the problem? I think we do. Do we jump through hoops? Do we juggle? Side story, I was going to teach myself to juggle for this class. Guess what? I gave up on it. No juggling. Do we try to find our way through a maze each day? I do think we have days like that, don't we? It is gratifying at a conference like this that we are with others who experience the same thing as we do. I think you'd agree with me. Just a quick snippet about the history of court administration. The federal court system was the area of the courts that saw first developments of using a court administrator, if you can believe that. The system was complex, and there was a recognized need to bring specialized skills and professional aptitude in the federal courts. The first known court manager in the United States was in Los Angeles. Currently, as we've heard, NACM has 1,800 members. We are indeed expanding our reach and our sharing and our networking across the country, internationally. Do we have some international attendees in this session? Yes? Glad to have you here. Welcome. Glad to have you here. We all learn from one another. And that prompts me to say I'm going to learn from our interaction today as well. NACM has been very active in interacting with other associations, judges, legal administrators, state judicial educators, federal courts, bankruptcy courts. We have been very, very proactive in trying to broaden the net and share and learn. Ultimately, it's going to increase the visibility of what we do. This booklet is one way to talk about what we do. We're going to share some ideas here about other ways to talk about what we do. So tell me, what's a day in the life of a court manager like? Geez, TJ's already shaking his head. Never the same. The day you plan and the day you have. Wonderful answer. Who else? What's a day in the life of a court administrator like? Meetings. Meetings. Once upon a time, I said the phrase, a day in the life of a court administrator is like A, B, C, and D. Absolute bedlam, chaos, and disarray. Has anybody had that? Yeah. A day in the life of a court manager can be meetings, relationships, political battles, political opportunities, budget, fiscal, HR issues, right? So what do you suppose the number one skill is for a court manager? And again, I'm using that term broadly. Judges, law clerks, bailiffs, court managers. What's the number one skill? I heard of leadership. What else? Flexibility. That's important. What else? Interpersonal skills. What else? Patience, communication. Midfield player. What does that mean, midfield player? I'll repeat that. You stand between the attack from the front and the players from the back? The what? Defense from the back. That's good. Midfield player. You know, one of the questions I commonly have, or debates I commonly have with one of my peers, is it better to be a specialist or a generalist? And that might be something as part of our getting you to think today about our profession. Number one, what do you want to be? Do you want to be a specialist? Do you want to be a generalist? Interestingly, on the airplane coming here was an article in the U.S. Airways magazine. It was a Harvard Business Review excerpt, The Age of Hyper-Specialization. And its theme is, a coming best practice is to be a generalist. I guess that makes sense if we're slimming our ranks and we're losing positions, and it's important for even the top executive to know all the aspects of an organization. I guess that makes sense. Anyone else who had an answer to this? What's the number one skill for a court manager?
It's not necessarily called a skill, but it's a requirement is to be an adrenaline junkie.
It's a requirement that you should be an adrenaline junkie. That's good. I guess by your laughter, some of you agree. We all know about the NACM core competencies. Quick slide about that. This is NACM's work product that intended to talk about the 10 most important core skills, knowledge, and abilities that a court manager, a generic court manager, should possess. I put this up here because this is currently the accepted documentation for our profession. The core competencies are under review, as some of you may know, maybe you don't. As we go through this class and through the rest of the conference, I would challenge you to think about what's not in here, what needs to be upgraded, updated, enhanced. I would challenge you to think about this wheel of these 10 core competencies. Where are you strong? Where do you want to get stronger? Where are you comfortable? Where are you less comfortable? I put this up here because this kind of frames what a court manager needs to know and be able to do. Of course, at the center of that wheel is the purposes of courts that we have all heard about. Ernie Friesen has had these out in circulation for many, many years. There are 8 of them. In general, all of them apply to all of our courts. But some of our courts have a little different rendition of how closely these direct what our purpose is on a daily basis. So, how many of you have had this happen? You're at a social activity. Someone comes up to you and says, I know you work for the court, but just what is it you do? Do you put guys in jail? Do you issue the warrants? Do you write the ticket? Do you go out and collect the money? How many of you have had that? Yeah. Who's got a good answer?
I tell people, I do the things that let judges be judges.
I do the things that let judges be judges.
In other words, I do all the other stuff so that judges can focus their time on being judges.
I do all the other stuff so judges can focus their time on being judges. Good answer. Who else?
I give you an answer that I give kids. I've had that question. For them to relate to it. I'm the principal.
Oh.
The principal oversees all the other teachers and all the administrative stuff. And you have a classroom and you have books and all that stuff. And that's pretty much what I do. That's my general for kids.
Great answer. I'm the principal. I oversee the kids, the classroom, the books, all the supplies. Great answer. Here are the ones I commonly use that seem to make sense. I'm like a hospital administrator. I make sure the building is there, the beds, the bedding, the people, the nurses, the medicine, the doctors. But I'm the one behind the scenes. People, I think, can identify with that. Or I'll say, I'm like a university administrator. I will now start using the principal methodology, because the principal has power. Anyone else have a good creative answer to that? Yes?
I always use responsible for court operations.
Responsible for court operations. Responsible for court operations, or in other words, the court as a whole. Good.
I say the judges run their courtrooms, I run the courthouse.
The judges run their courtrooms, I run the courthouse. That's good too. That's good too. Yes?
We always say that I'm the theater operator. Make sure the popcorn's hot.
Oh, I like that.
And if the movie sucks, then that's what happens in the court.
I like that. Theater operator, I make sure the movie's on, the popcorn's fresh, the candy bar is stocked, and if it doesn't go right, gotta go now, bye. It's Hollywood's problem. Yeah, well, I like both of yours. You had a comment. COO. Very good. Chief Operating Officer, is that what you're... And I have used that too. The presiding judge is the Chief Executive Officer, CEO, and I'm the COO, Chief Operating Officer. Very good. You have good answers. You could be teaching this class. Well, it's my hope that after this session, you have a few more tools to think about how to describe what it is that we do. Going to ask you to take a quick opportunity, think about what you do. How many of you are familiar with the concept of mind mapping? Mind mapping. A few of you are. We have a slide up here with a mind map. You have a full-page handout, hopefully. If you don't have one, improvise. Get a blank piece of paper. In a moment, I'm going to ask you to think about what you do, your job, your profession, your work environment, and fill out a mind map. Let me give you an example. Here is a mind map of me planning my vacation. In the center is me saying, I'm going on vacation. And as I'm thinking about this, I'm writing each one of these as they occur to me. And the idea with a mind map is to kind of plot stuff out as you go. There's no scientific way. It needs to be on a piece of paper. So the one I gave you with the little lines, improvise and change it. But what I want you to think about is your role as a court manager, a court administrator. That's in the center. What is it you do? And start writing lines of main categories. For example, when I go on vacation, I'm going to shop. You'll notice this is at the top of the wheel here. I'm going to shop. I'm going to find some time to go eat out. I might have some tours. I'm going to rest, read, and I'm going to seek out some family members. Then as I think further about my vacation, I start to put a little more definition. When I eat out, I'm going to go get some ice cream. I'm going to find a seafood place. On the leisure side, I might look for a museum to go visit, or I might go on a boat trip. I want you to use this model and begin to think about, and this is just for you, in my role at the court, what the heck do I do? Give some thought to that. Use this sheet or improvise. Come up with the high-level categories of what you do. And again, I'm assuming we are all in the same group as those who work in the courts to make our business happen. So whether you're a judge or a court reporter or a bailiff or a front counter staff or a collections or warrant officer or a trainer, what are the main categories you do? And then what are some of the offshoot functions from those categories? So for example, instead of tours, you might say, I'm responsible for paperwork and document handling. Okay, what kind of key documents? What we're trying to do is to get you to think about your world and what you do. Take a few minutes, think about this, jot your thoughts on the paper. Questions? This is the part where I'm giving you an opportunity to kind of reflect on what your work world consists of. In the interest of time, I'm going to give you about 30 more seconds. The idea here is to kind of get you started on using this process. So about 30 more seconds. Think about your work world and what you do. Okay. Again, the idea was to give you a tool that you could use to plot out or begin to describe what it is you do as a court professional. It's an imperfect science, but you can use this for planning your vacation, thinking about your work world, thinking about a project that you're implementing. Put the key thing in the center, and then on the different spokes of the wheel, start to fill in the key areas that relate to that key objective. Let me ask, does anyone have a comment that they'd like to share from this process? Did anyone realize something as they started to jot these notes? You need another sheet. That's a good answer, and that's perfectly allowed. You wear a lot of hats. You know, one thing you could do with this is start one. Oh, whoa, that's wrong. Put it aside, start another one. Or continue from one sheet to the other. I have literally used this process because I'm approaching these crossroads called retirement, and I'm trying to figure out what comes next. So I use this process, and I put retirement in the middle, and then I started saying, okay, what are the key things I want? Okay, one was travel, one was family, one was household, one was maybe part-time job. You can use this for every single aspect. A work project, your life, a problem you're struggling with. Did anyone have an aha experience besides needing another sheet of paper? Yes?
Yeah, a lot of things I do sometimes don't have part of my principal job.
A lot of things you do are not a part of your principal job. This is a great process to identify that. I contend that this is a good process for you to think about who I am, what I'm doing in the court, and how I tell other people about it. It's one more way to kind of conceptualize what it is we do. So, thank you for kind of diving into that. Just a quick, short exposure. There are a number of books out there on mind mapping. If you ever get the opportunity to look at one or look it up online, it's a really, really interesting process. Essentially, it's brainstorming. But it's putting it in this format where you kind of get a quick map of something. Okay. I've taken a look at a lot of job descriptions for the position, the court administrator. And again, I'm using that title very loosely. Here's some of the words that describe the key tasks of court administrators. These should look familiar. You manage things, you direct things, like the principal. You supervise things, coordinate, develop, interpret, you implement things, etc. These are common, big, broad job expectations of court administrators or of court professionals. We're going to segue into the use of an elevator speech. Who knows what an elevator speech is? I see a couple hands. An elevator speech is a short, to-the-point speech that tells someone who you are, what you do, and shares information with them so that they know why it's important. In fact, in a recent issue of Harvard Business Review, the cover says, "Manage your image." And the story inside says why it's important to pitch yourself in 30 seconds. That's an elevator speech. It's a short summary to quickly and simply define a product, a service. In this case, we're going to use it to define us. You have to get your point across quickly. You might be using an elevator speech to pitch an idea. I'm suggesting we have elevator speeches ready to describe what we do in courts. That you can deliver in 30 seconds, get your message across, help them understand the importance of who you are and what your role is. First impression counts, and the information has to be meaningful. Again, Harvard Business Review online has a whole set of documents that describe how to do your elevator speech. The web link is down at the bottom there. They have templates. I have simplified it here for us today. We are going to do 3 things. We're going to think about who you are, what you do, and why it's important. Who you are in the court system, what you do in the court system, and why it's important. We started the conference out hearing about iCivics and the importance of people understanding the judiciary. We're going to bring that down to reality here for those of us who work in the courts. So, you each should have an index card. You can use a blank piece of paper. You can use the back side of your mind map. What I want you to do is, on your index card, write your elevator speech. 3 phrases, 3 bullet lists, 3 words. Quick, to the point. Who you are, what your role is, what your purpose is, and why it's important. On that card, you're answering these 3 things. What I want you to do is spend a few minutes thinking about that, and then I'm going to ask you to turn to your seatmate, your people sitting by you, and share what you came up with. This is your chance to tell them who you are, what you do, why it's important. It's got to be short, got to be to the point. Assume that you're telling your seatmate, who is a stranger at social hour, what it is you do in the court. Does everyone understand what we're doing? Okay, take a few minutes, write these 3 things. Who you are, that could be your job title, that could be your tasks, what you do, what your primary functions are, and why it is important. I'm going to give you a couple of minutes, and then when you're done, please turn and share with your seatmates or your colleagues. Remember, you're writing this to tell a stranger, even though we're going to practice with ourselves. You're writing this to tell a stranger what it is you do in the court system. Okay, as those of you who have a start on this are ready, why don't you turn and share with those seated beside you? What's your elevator speech? let's come back together. Okay, let's come back together if we could. This was great. Wow, I really do applaud all of you. This is great to hear everyone awake after the lunch hour. Very good. Okay, how many of you have heard of the author Harvey Mackay, the guy who wrote How to Swim with the Sharks Without Getting Eaten Alive? He has even written an article titled, Use Your Elevator Speech to Sell Your Message. And in this article, he says, outstanding speakers make 3 benchmarks in their elevator speech. They make their case, might be persuading someone, they use creativity, and they think about their delivery. How are they going to tell it? What we've done is practice using your own little index card. What I'd like to do is ask for a volunteer to share with us your elevator speech. And I'm going to ask TJ to bring the microphone to you. Who'd like to share what they came up with for their elevator speech? We had a lot of good exchange going on. Who's brave? Who's brave?
I told the people in the back you'd pick on them, sit in the back.
Oh, yes. Uh-oh. Somebody volunteer before I do that. Who's brave to share what you came up with? Great, thank you. Tell us your elevator speech.
Hi, my name's Hans Jessup. I work for the Nevada Supreme Court, where I'm the lead court research analyst over the statistics program for the Nevada Supreme Court, which allows me to work with all the 77 courts in the state, maintain, collect, analyze the statistics for the state. The reason this is important is it allows us to meet legislative mandates in reporting caseload statistics to the Nevada legislature. Additionally, we use the statistics to assist courts in responding to requests from their city councils, county councils for budgetary issues and things of that nature. So we use our statistics to help with the legislative process as well as the courts themselves.
Very good. Give him a round of applause. Thank you. Did he make his case? Yeah, the reason this is important is, very good. Who else? Guinea pig. Who else has a good elevator pitch, elevator speech? I'm going to pick on Rod. Rod, share your elevator speech. He looked at me. He's going to get even with me afterwards. Rod is a colleague of mine. Tell us your elevator speech, Rod.
Okay, my name is Rod Wetland. I'm a court services supervisor, obviously not a deputy or court administrator. I deal with the public in all areas and facets of the court. It's important to me because I'm the face of the court and usually the first person a customer sees either immediately after or before the judge sees them. It's important because I'm required to respond accurately and quickly to any concerns or questions that the customers might have.
Very nice. Give Rod a round of applause. So what we're doing here is practicing how we tell people what we do, because frankly, to a lot of people, our collective business is really foreign. Am I right? We heard about the challenge in iCivics of people understanding what courts are. Thank you, Rod, for letting me pick on you. Anyone else as I walk towards the rear of the room? What'd they say? 7 seconds will go by before someone will volunteer. One more person. Who's got a good elevator speech? How about you, madame? Tell us your elevator speech. Who you are, what you do, why it's important.
Well, I'm only going 2 floors. My name is Claire Capristo, and I am the Chief Deputy Court Administrator for the 5th Judicial District in Pennsylvania, which is Allegheny County. I'm responsible for a variety of operational needs of the court, including providing legal advice and guidance to the court and court-related offices on internal policies and procedures.
Very good. A round of applause for Claire. Thank you. All right, thank you everyone for letting me single you out. The idea was one more tool to let you play with. How do I describe what I do? What do I do, and why is it important? I would challenge you to think about this as you're driving or flying home from the conference. What am I now going to be better equipped with to tell people what I do? Question.
Can't help thinking, tying the two things together, the mind mapping and the elevator speech, using the mind mapping as a way to brainstorm, to get the ideas of what we do and who you are, and putting the two together.
Thank you. Nice linkage there. You're right. Using the mind map as kind of a start to define what I'm doing, and then cull it down in the elevator speech, the elevator pitch, if you will. So I would challenge you to think about this process when you go back and you are telling people what you do in the court system. Do you think you can use this? I hope you can. I hope you can. Thank you again, everyone, for participating and those for sharing. That was the first third of our session where we kind of introduced the concept about who we are, what our roles are in the court. The next part of our presentation is going to go over this new mini guide that has been published by NACM. We're going to go over why have this, and among the main reasons were to promote a better understanding of court administration, to describe the importance of court management. We've kind of just done that with the elevator speech and the mind map. This also provides detail about the roles, responsibilities, skill sets. This document was intended to be read by judges, college students, those interested in courts, court staff, essentially everyone who has an interest in courts. I want to give a word of appreciation to our committee that worked on this. This is a listing of our committee members. This was done this last year under the leadership of Peter Coulson, NACM board member and chair of the Publications Committee. And I'm proud to announce that 2 individuals in this session were on this subcommittee, TJ, who introduced me, and Chris Bluenstein, seated back there. So they helped produce this wonderful document. I don't think anyone else on our committee is in the class. But if you are, raise your hand. We had 9 hardworking folks. We started our work in May of 2010. The directive from the NACM board was to take this document that was a little dated. I believe the last version was published in 2002. Update it, spruce it up, think about content, think about what's needed in this as a quick read guide and manual. We evaluated the language. There was some language that was pretty dated in here. We updated the code of conduct, the NACM model code of conduct. In the time between the first version being published and now, NACM had come up with their national agenda, the strategic directions. There was quite a bit of language that needed modernizing. We expanded some content. The end product, what we're talking about, was published in January 2011. It goes to all NACM members. Many people have also purchased copies to share with various groups. A little later in the session, I'll be talking with you about interesting uses of this manual. This chart details the changes and the maturity between the various versions of the manual. The first known version of this manual was published in 1980s. Think about how long ago that is. That document was 14 pages long. This one is 30. There's an indication right there of the maturing of the profession, of the maturing of how we describe what we do. This chart is just a quick at-a-glance of things that have changed. You should be able to see the right-hand column is the latest version. There's a big list of chapters or categories, if you will, in this book that were not present back in the 80s, back in 1992, back in 2002, the most recent publication before the current one. Among the things that are most notable, the NACM National Agenda, the future of court administration, the update of the Code of Conduct, inclusion of the core competencies, quite a few changes. All of those show both the increasing professionalism of what we do and the increasing maturity of our profession. Here's another listing of the key elements that were in this mini guide. Core competencies, we added a segment on the executive team. Code of conduct. What do we need to think about for the future of court administration? What skills and knowledge do we need to have for the future? NACM's national agenda was put in here. I believe you may have heard Jude Del Priore talk about the national agenda and some of the accomplishments during this last year. The outline for the national agenda was included in this mini guide. Here now is a chart of some of the typical duties of a court administrator. This is a summary of what appears in this mini guide, and I challenge you to look at it and think about, is it inclusive enough? Have we got everything in there? I tell you what, the ink had not dried on this. See these yellow stickies? I've already found things that I thought we missed. So I challenge you to look at it, and as you use it, if you think of things we missed, let me know. Let me know. But here's the list that was in there. Case flow management, HR, budget and fiscal, information technology, all of the things you would think a court manager is responsible for. But there's some new things. Emergency preparedness, succession planning, being green or fiscally responsible, performance management, metrics, having statistics to talk about what we do, project leadership and oversight. That's a growing responsibility that all of us have. And a project can be teeny tiny or it can be huge. It can be changing a form that's used in your court, or it can be working on a new courthouse. So this was the listing of typical duties as we saw it when we were revising this mini guide. I do challenge you, if you think of something that's not in there, send me an email, let me know. Here's this idea of executive team concept. If any of you have heard some of the prominent court management speakers, Dale Lefevre comes to mind. This is the concept that the judge, the chief judge, presiding judge, president judge, whatever you call them, and the top COO, court administrator, form the executive team or partnership to lead the court. This was not in an earlier edition of this mini guide. We felt it was important because it really does take both parts of the operation, the judicial and the non-judicial, to run the ship. So one of the questions I have for you is, how do we promote the executive team? What can we do? How do we make sure that we've got both the CEO and COO running the court? That would be a good topic for a mind map. Executive team, and then what do I need to do to get it in operation? That would be a good exercise for this mind map. This mini guide also includes a listing of job success factors, learning skills, communication skills, adaptability, being motivated, being able to set goals, obviously interpersonal skills, negotiation, teamwork, leadership, and ethical performance skills. This list was expanded for this publication because we thought it was important to talk about these as job success factors that someone working in this role needs to have. Let me pause and see if there's any questions so far. All right, good. Here again is the NACM Core Competency Wheel. This is in the booklet as well. As you have heard at this conference, the core competencies are currently under revision. Do you think something's missing? Does anyone have an answer for me? Is something missing from the core competencies? Succession planning. It's a good suggestion. As we have increased turnover, as we have individuals retiring, as we have individuals going from public sector to private sector, in light of the fact that courts are very complex, it's a good idea to have succession planning. Good one. What else? What else is missing from this? Ethics. You think ethics should be separate. Why?
It's such an important issue.
It's very important.
You know, it touches everything that we do. Some of the sessions earlier touched on, you know, ethical decision making, use of social media, and just the development of policies within the court.
Boy, ethics is overreaching. The development of policies, dealing with day-to-day issues, use of electronic media. Yep. Ethics. Very good. Anyone else? As you look at this wheel, what seems to be missing? One comment I'll make, when this was created, there's a whole slew of skills in this category called essential elements. They include, if I'm recalling correctly, interpreters, making the record, facility management, security management, a whole slew of miscellaneous things. One might assert that some of those are big enough that they should stand alone. So, think about what's missing. There is a solicitation on the NACM website for those who are experts to apply to be a subject matter expert to help revise these. If you think you have that skill, if you know someone who has that skill, in one of these, at least for now, one of these categories, you might invite them to look at the posting. The goal is, just like our thinking about our elevator speeches, update this so we have a new rendition of who we are and what we need to be able to know and do. Does that make sense? Okay. Another question here. What skills do you think we're going to need in 5 years? What skills do you think we're going to need in 25 years? How about the 5-year first? Holler out what skill you think we're going to need in 5 years. Technology. What else? How to grow money on trees. Social media, social interaction. Remote working. Fewer people at work. Virtual courthouse. What are our users going to expect? Real time, everything, remotely. You mean I have to come down to the court to get that case filed? Yeah. There's another topic that would be good for a mind map. Put in the middle, 25 years, meaning 25 years from now, what are we going to need to think about for our jobs, our profession, our business?
What type of employees do we hire?
Say that again.
What type of employees or staff do we hire?
What type of employees are we going to hire? What type of employees? I think that's pertinent right now. In my community, the public sector is taking a beating. It's getting bad raps. We're overpaid. Public sector employees are lazy, don't understand the three branches of government. What type of employees do we want to attract? What type of employees do we need? Yep. Do we want people who are comfortable working remotely, but we don't have all the apparatus ready to support that? Do we expect customers that want remote, immediate access, but we don't have the employees to get that in place? Think about, what do we need 5 years from now, 25 years from now? There's no perfect answer, by the way. So here's a quick at-a-glance chart of the code of conduct that's in the mini guide. It is quick for view on this screen, not to minimize the importance. As Paul said, ethics underlies lots of things. But there are 4 key areas in this code of conduct: avoiding impropriety, performing the duties impartially and diligently, being aware of our conduct, minimizing the risk of our conduct outside the workplace. We've heard several references to that already in some of the courses we've had, and paying attention to what activities appropriate or inappropriate. I think it's a really great thing that this code of conduct is in this manual if we are going to share the manual with others to explain what we do. Because don't we have quite a few guidelines that describe how we must behave and how we must deliver? This mini guide can be one vehicle for folks to read about that. Here's the NACM National Agenda. It includes case flow management, sustaining excellence in difficult times. Boy, that's a realistic topic. Public perceptions, court community collaboration. We had a class on that already. Court leadership and governance. You know, running a court is more than just having a judge at the bench and a clerk at the counter, isn't it? It's that governance stuff and the leadership that makes the ship go in the right direction. Number 5 is interesting: preparing for and responding to trends. What trends do we think are coming in 5 years, 10 years, 25 years? And then lastly, this conference, supporting professional development and education, both through the university and college setting, as well as through promoting and pushing out the NACM core competencies. In the new mini guide, here is a listing of some of the things we think the court administrator of the future needs to think about and be ready for. Collaboration and dialogue, a lot of interaction, other justice system partners, providers we interact with to do our business, community groups, A lot of interaction. Using technology, we've mentioned that a couple of times. Satisfying public expectations. That could be a biggie. That's already big for us. Interdependencies. Who can give me a good example of some interdependencies at your court? Who are we dependent upon? Law enforcement, what? Court reporters. Huh? I couldn't hear you. What? Oh, yes. Administrative office of the courts. District attorney. Interpreters. Filing officers. Jail system, funding source. What about the media? Whoa. Yeah. Lots and lots of interdependencies. I think it's only going to get worse, too. Because part of what's happening is some courts are shifting their duties. As part of managing limited monies, some duties are being redefined and passed off to a partner. Some courts are taking duties that the partner is offloading. Interdependencies, that's a big, big area. Court administrators of the future are going to need to think about that. No matter how many people you have working remotely, there's still going to be interdependencies. Intricacies of the system, and lastly, being adept at change. Why is it so hard to change? Who was in the class where you were asked to put your hands together? A lot of people. Some of you weren't. Everybody put your hands together. Okay, take a look at which thumb is on top. Take your hands apart and do it the opposite. Hard, isn't it? Yet every single day we've got this kind of change going on in our court. Every single day some of our partners want us to do this kind of change. It's hard. Interdependencies and being adept at change. Pretty important. Here's a listing of some challenges and opportunities in the new environment. Take a look at the left-hand column, the bottom bullet. I would suggest we stop saying doing more with less and instead say do different with less. Do different with less. I think it sounds less negative. And we are going to have to redesign some of our processes if we have less resources, from people to facilities to office supplies. So I would assert, think about doing different with less. So, some questions for us. What do we do to get court administration 2.0? What do we need to plan for? What do we need to seek out so that we can be ready? How do we mature the profession? Once again, you could use a mind map on this. What opportunities do we have? What are our biggest risks? These are all questions that we ought to think about, both as we explain what we are, who we are, what we do, and as we prepare ourselves and our colleagues for the future. In recent issue of the NACM Court Express, this article appeared, and it talked about the new reality for court managers. Look at this list. This is a challenge for us. Long-term and prolonged reduction of human and financial or fiscal resources. We're not going to have easy solutions for revenue. I know we have a couple of sessions in this conference on collections and enforcing court-ordered obligations. It's going to be interesting to hear some new insights on what might be best practices. This is a reality based on the fiscal challenge. Future budgetary savings are not going to come from the traditional sources. We aren't just going to be able to raise money by implementing fees. We aren't just going to be able to save money by cutting the budget. How many of you have taken budget cuts of over 10% in the last year? Yeah. Huh? Yeah. How many have had 20%? Some areas are really challenged. I think Nevada is one of them, right? So we have to get creative and think about these new realities. Number 4, courts need to revisit their mission, define their core business. What is our core business? Serving the public. Justice. What is it? Being responsive to the need of the users. Yeah? We have to think about what our core business is. Intergovernmental relationships. Those are important because we're all challenged. Our funding agencies are not always sympathetic to us coming to the door and saying, I'm the court, I'm special, I need money. And number 6, is the court going to be in a new place where things are better? We don't know yet. This is a new reality we need to think about. Next slide has some current trends. A gap between expectations and our capacity. Users are getting more and more diverse, both in their demands and their expectations. Increased pressure. Cultural needs to provide specialized services, like special court functions. Keeping pace with technology, that seems to be a continual pressure. And how are we going to do it when funding is scarce and change on our organization is very difficult? But look at the last bullet, increasing opportunities to implement innovations and literally revolutionize how courts do business. We do have that opportunity. I think that links to our whole topic of what's the role of us. What should we do? What can we do? What place do we need to take in revolutionizing what we do? John Martin and Brenda Wagenknecht-Ivy assert, here's what courts must do. In other words, here's what court managers must do. We're not in a short-term rough patch. This is here for a while. We're going to have a challenge. We need to re-examine our mission, our scope, rethink how we deliver services, maybe redefine what the services are. Nimble, agile, responsive, revolutionize our culture. Create new partnerships. Many of you in the room have implemented projects where you have literally created partnerships where they were not before. Court community collaborations, self-help centers, putting information out on the web, partnering with libraries. Those are just some examples. And look at this last one. Be even more tenacious in advocating for the court's needs. I think in our role as court professionals, and in thinking about this mini guide on the court administrator, and our self-assessment, we should have more tools to be tenacious and talk about what we do. Here's a book that our NACM president, Jude Del Priore, put me onto. It's called The Power of Professionalism. And here are 7 mindsets of professionals. Read through this, and I want to hear from you. Which one would you like to try the most? Which one would you like to test out? Assume the conference ends, pack up your materials, you go back. Which one of these would you like to test out when you go back in your court? Rod. Very good. That's tough, too. We work in an emotionally charged environment, don't we? Anyone else? What would you like to go back and test out from this list? Number 7? Oh, that links with succession planning. Aspire to reveal value in others. Good. Comment in the last row. Oh no. Know that personal integrity is all they have. Yeah. Boy, think about Sandra Day O'Connor and the path she has gone and where she is. And the fortitude and integrity and her value set that has driven her. I think she exemplifies this, 7 mindsets of the professional. Anyone else, something you want to try out from this list when you go home? You like number 2. Yeah. Who said that? That's good. Realize you're bigger, you're part of something bigger than just yourself. So how are you going to demonstrate that when you go back? No one else had, that's not on here. No one else had to justify their answer. That really is what we need to think about. We are part of something bigger than just ourselves. We're part of the system. We're part of a process. So, look at this list. Future leader traits is on the left. I want you to jot down what you think some top qualities are. Just off the top of your head, what are some of the top qualities future leaders need? Top qualities. Okay. I would ask you to think about this as you go through the rest of the conference sessions. What are the qualities that I want, that I need? And then we'll loop back to this elevator pitch. Having listened to this session, having reviewed the mini guide, think about what would you put in your next elevator speech? What would you put in your next executive summary that tells someone who you are, what you do, why you do it? Might help promote the understanding of our court system. Here's a quick listing of how we can use the manual. Many of you have mentioned some of these already. Give copies to your management team, share them with your judicial officers, give it to your new presiding judge, share with all judges. If you go to a presentation, take copies along. Steal things from the manual and use them in your speech. It's perfectly allowable. Use it to prepare for a job interview. Imagine that. Use it to prepare for a job interview. Use it to think about your skills and self-assess when it's time for your performance review. Think about these questions as part of that self-assessment. What goals do I have for myself? What accomplishments? What stumbling blocks? Here's a quick note about a recent use of this mini guide. The NACM president, Jude Del Priore, wrote an editorial column for the state of North Carolina, where they were thinking about abolishing certain jobs in the court system. And he used content out of this mini guide to write an editorial that, by gosh, was printed in the paper. And I believe it helped make the difference. So here's a real-life example of how you could use this mini guide. You need to educate your funding source on who you are and what you do? Look at the mini guide. Okay? So I would encourage you to think about what are your takeaways from today? How can you use some of this material? Going from as simple as thinking about yourself, using the mind map, the elevator pitch, how can you use the mini guide itself? I very much appreciate your participation, your comments, your reactions, and I thank you for your attendance today.
Please take a moment to fill out the green sheet. You can just leave on your table and I'll collect this after you all leave.
Oh, do I need to pay you off?